Hey guys, hope everyone's doing really well today. I wanted to quickly just discuss, and obviously I'm not a financial advisor or anything like that, but just generally speaking, how should you invest your money? What's the, what's the, how do you say it? What's the, best practice for investing money, right? And we'll kind of get into it, but there are lots and lots of different ways you can do investing. Lots of different timelines, different products, different types of investing. So, and I mean, lots of them have different outcomes. Some people specialize in one and they do really well. Others like to diversify and invest in lots of different things. But just as a general rule of thumb, you can kind of really invest in anything that you believe in. You've done lots of research on. Objectively, it has done really well in the past. Might not always be in the future, but you've done your homework, right? There are lots of different ways to invest. So let's get into it. What asset classes can you invest in? Now, the most common are obviously the stock market, and I'm talking either the American stock market, the US stock exchange. You can also invest in Australian stocks. I know a lot of you know Singaporean banks offer investments into the Singaporean or even Greater Asia stock market there. So there's lots of different stock markets you can invest in. Real estate, the same thing goes for that. You can invest in obviously Australian real estate or international real estate. Most countries will let you purchase just under your own name. Some will require a business or a trust, or potentially even a business partner. But yeah, real estate pretty much anywhere. Cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, meme coins, commodities like gold. Gold has done really well recently. Even though the stock market, the S&P 500 hasn't done nearly as well. Gold's really flourished recently, and bonds or certificates of deposits, essentially a place to store money and earn a safe interest return on that. Businesses could also be another type of asset, either as a shareholder, venture capital, or into your own business. By shareholder, I mean someone that you have equity in. Venture capital is actually paying your way into the business, either through as an investment or maybe a loan of sorts, to kind of help that business grow and flourish. Um, Arguably, as well, into your own business as well is a type of asset. I mean, back yourself. You are your most important asset yourself. You are your money maker when it comes to everything money. So investing into yourself, investing into your own business could also be seen as an investment. Alternative investments might also include peer-to-peer lending. So that's maybe lending money to a friend. Collectibles, Pokemon cards, Nintendo, tradable collectible cards, anything like that could be interesting. Art is a really good one. Liquor, wines, beers, spirits. Maybe not so much beer, but yeah. And digital assets could be NFTs, which haven't really done much recently, but could also be other types of digital assets. Yeah, there's lots of just different ways to invest. You can also invest, outside of your local market, for example, Singapore and South Australia, like I mentioned before. Not every market is easily accessible, nor would you want to invest in every single market ever. But there are opportunities internationally if that's something that you're interested in. I haven't here included education, but investing in yourself is crucial to success in the above. Like I mentioned before, investing into yourself is really important. Um, the education would be actually one of my top investments focuses personally. But in terms of sole money, where to invest your money, I haven't included that for obvious reasons, because it won't directly bring on a cash on cash return. But there is no doubt if you spend, for example, $100 on books in a certain area, you action those insights, it's very likely that $100 could turn easily into $1,000 through maybe you start a new business, maybe you find some cheap items to flip online, maybe you simply start investing in the stock market. So I have no doubt that education will have an insane return compared to pretty much any other money, cash on cash returns you'll be able to get. Now, in terms of how to structure your asset portfolio, I think it's generally good to be diversified across asset classes, currencies, and markets for your own protection. I mean, I mentioned this before, but in a previous video, but even though Australia is primed to invest in real estate, it's fantastic, lots of benefits, um, lots of perks to being invested in real estate. There are times when, for example, maybe the government changes some type of legislation that affects property investors. Maybe there's a whole bunch of natural disasters. Maybe insurers don't want to, protect certain types of properties. There's just so many things that could go wrong if you're only solely invested into one thing. So it's always good, in my opinion, to have a little bit of diversification, at least, even if you have high conviction in like real estate, for example. Just having a few different options because you just never know. Um, you don't want everything to topple all down at once. Ideally have something topple down and you can kind of just keep moving on and take that loss and just invest into other things, ideally, if through diversification, even internationally, investing in different bank accounts, investing in different stock markets, just yeah, gives you new exposures and also protections as well. For example, if you live in Turkey, and you only have access to the Turkish lira, which has been known to depreciate, year on year on year, it just keeps going down, compared to the US dollar. You'd be in trouble. So ideally, you'd want to diversify. Now, a common approach is going all in on what you know and then diversifying once wealth has grown. You could do that. A lot of people do it. Some people say that is a really bad idea. Some people say it's the best thing you can do. So it's totally up to you, or your professional advisor, financial advisor, to talk to you on. But a lot of people do end up doing really well at one thing, and then once they hit a certain mark, they get the advice that, hey, you should probably diversify, and then they do that. Versus, from the start diversifying and then kind of slowly having different things grow over time. You really double down on one and you go from there. Now, your allocation of your portfolio really just depends on your risk level. Things like income, time horizon, goals, and personal factors, what you personally believe in or what you can or can't do, will have a lot of influence around this. For example, if you're a little bit more, say you're heading into retirement and you're maybe 50 or 60 years old, maybe not physically being able to see your money is a big thing for you, as is for a lot of people, in different generations. Something like cryptocurrency would not be good for you, in my opinion, just because um, the high volatility, it's high risk. It also requires some technical know-how around, cold storage, hot storage, and being able to, I guess, appreciate that. Hey, this is almost like internet money. You can't physically see it. You don't know what a Bitcoin looks like, and some people just don't understand that. So for you, for that person, cryptocurrency might not be a thing. Whereas if you're young, you have lots of time, and you're very techy, and you love going into DeFi, you love meme coins, etc. Maybe it's good to have 10, 20%, or maybe more of your assets as cryptocurrency. Another point here is that investing, I guess, like I just alluded to before, investing is very personalized. So I've personally dabbled in a lot of different assets before I found what I really enjoy, which is, it's been real estate, which is awesome. But I mean, I've tried, and I still do have assets, or sorry, investments in other assets. The S&P 500, the ASX, cryptocurrency, other currencies as well. I know at one stage I did invest in the Georgian lari, and that ended up doing really well over a certain time, a couple of years ago. So, you know, it all depends on you, or your advice that you receive. But ultimately, you will find what works and what doesn't, and then you can kind of go from there. Now, while some different types of investments have historically done better than others or worse than others, no one really knows what the future holds. And I think maybe 20 years ago, no one would have ever thought that a cryptocurrency of sorts was going to do as well as it's done. Um, there is no such thing as a guaranteed return. A lot of people say real estate, for example, is a guaranteed return, but You just don't know because there are markets in real estate, there are markets within markets and markets within those. And there are certain properties that might be good, might not be good. You cannot guarantee, and this is especially prevalent for those who have, for example, invested in a big lot of units in some western suburb of Sydney that they just keep building. You're probably losing money on that asset, or you're selling it at a loss when it does come to it. So you just don't know. Just because everyone says something is really safe or historically it's been really good, does not mean that when you go and invest in that, you will always get a great outcome. You might end up losing money. Now, a couple tips for improving your investment success. I think brainstorming a strong wealth strategy that works for you and your goals could be really important. I've actually made a previous video on this exact thing, but you know, what does wealth look like for you? How do you want to attain it? What does that process look like? And making sure that that's personalized to you. I can very easily, tell someone the best way to make, a certain amount of money when they're on $1 million a year, when they have no family, when they have no expenses. Super easy. But for you, you might prefer one thing over another. You might not understand something or some type of investing, and you might not be willing to learn. You just want to make a little bit of money safely, and that's fine. Then understand what that looks like and then build a strategy around that. Or professional help can also be of assistance here. Another tip here is that education is a priority. So continue to learn and test different assets over time and tailor those to what you feel works better than others. I mean, again, education is the cornerstone, in my opinion, to making money. Mindset as well goes along with that. Do not put them off to the side. They should be the number one thing that you invest in before you even think about making money. All right. Getting up here right will make sure that even if you're earning a lot of money, you're not spending a lot, or vice versa. If you're not, if you're spending a lot and you're not making a lot, that's even worse. But just having the mindset and building that education will make sure that you can kind of flourish over the long term, not just make this a short term thing. Having systems in place is very important when it comes to investing, saving, and growing wealth easy. I've made another video on this previously, which you can go back and watch. But I mean, systems are really important. They make it so that you can consistently and easily do things over time, including saving and growing your wealth. So definitely important. Wealth is another tip is that wealth is made long term. Some people get really lucky, but I'd say for 99% of people, wealth is made over the long term, especially when you kind of consider compounding returns. So make sure it's sustainable and enjoyable. It will be a fun ride if you make it a fun ride. Compounding will do its thing. Ideally, there'll be less and less for you to worry about, and you can kind of actually start, getting less involved in the money and really start to focus on living your life, being financially free. That is the best feeling. That's something that I've really worked hard to achieve in the last few years. And now I'm recording videos on finance because I'm passionate about it. Versus having to struggle and work my way around things. It's really actually more of an enjoyable thing for me nowadays because I've really mastered it. So yeah, last point here, last tip I should say, is that tweaking to optimize for fees, taxes, and vehicles will skyrocket your strategy successes. So fees, for example, in your superannuation, maybe wherever you're investing your brokerage, maybe the state you're investing in for real estate, all these little things, being able to kind of pinpoint where who has the cheapest fees, obviously not sacrificing your investment returns, but where you're able to get the best bang for your buck, you know is going to be really important to make sure that those gains can go even further. Taxes, doing your best to use different vehicles like superannuation, maybe tax deductible real estate, or maybe some kind of leveraged returns where you're able to deduct interest off the deduct tax off the interest. Things like this is going to be really important, and that'll just take you one level further than just solely let's try and make some money. Really kind of tailoring and optimizing those processes and those systems to make sure you can flourish. So, yeah, those are some tips. I think hopefully they're helpful for you guys. It's been really great for me personally to be able to take it to the next level and really just optimize and not be okay with just, okay, being great. I think that's really important. So, yeah, hopefully you guys have really enjoyed the video. Make sure to give it a like and subscribe down below. And otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.